Hi, today we're going to talk about this, how to add the shooting animation to Ellen. I have double checked that the instructions work. I have also the colors just to make it more clear, like the yellow stuff are the new lines, and here where it says step 9, add new conditions to trigger the above transition at the right time, and says see below, sees in blue. Well, there you go. These are the explanations, right? So this is a reference through color. And then at the end it tells you how to do the shooting actions for the input system, the so-called controls file. Okay, let's see what this is about first of all. Okay, so it's a trick. I highlight Ellen so that here in the animator it shows me the animations being completed. So when I press play, it will play the spawning animations. There you go, she goes completely up and then she transitions down. First of all, why she does that? Well, because in the transition we have checked this. What this means is, instead of explicitly specifying a logical condition based on variable values and stuff, we say based on time, when the animation is completely played, so the spawning animation plays, so she goes from being crunchy to be completely up, then transition. That's what this means. It means wait the animation completely done and then move transition, right? Notice that we are clicking on this transition, so that's what we get in the inspector when we click on one of the arrows. And now it is not common to check this because usually you want the animations to be interruptible. For instance, the animation for walking consists in her moving her right foot forward and then her left foot forward, right? So imagine that you can only jump when this animation is completely done. That would mean that if halfway you press the button to jump, she still completes the animation to do the other half step forward before jumping. That would be terrible, right? So usually you don't want it. And similarly for shooting, right? So the condition, so if you click on the arrow to go from walking to shooting, first of all, it doesn't have this because you don't want to wait for the walking animation to end for to be able to shoot. You want to do it immediately. And notice that is okay. The transition between one animation and the other doesn't look jarring because Unity does the merging automatically. So as you can see, the current animation becomes less and less important and it merges with the new one that becomes more and more important. So usually they merge pretty well, okay? Seamlessly the transition from one to the other. Now this condition requires that you are aiming, that means you are pressing, for instance, the right mouse button, and you are also pressing the left mouse button, for instance. There is also other ways to shoot and aim, but let's say we are using the mouse. So right mouse button is pressed, it zooms in, but she keeps walking normally. Let me show you, right? So you can see the animation for walking is exactly the same. When you are zooming, she just keeps walking. And that's why this keeps going, right? I press the right mouse button, she doesn't transition here. But if I press also the left mouse button, then you see the transition to shoot. And then if I release the right mouse button, she both zooms out because the right mouse button is lifted, and because the condition to go back says there are actually two conditions. Is either this one where it says the aim is false, you are not aiming, meaning the right mouse button is lifted like we did now, or you may be keeping the right mouse button down but you are not shooting anymore, and that is like this, and then I release the left mouse button so she stops shooting but the right mouse button is still there. So of course I can also release both, and well, it does that. Alright, so condition to go from move to shoot is that you are both aiming and shooting, and specifically you're not jumping and sprinting. So notice that I added these two variables, jumping and sprinting. That is, by the way, explicitly stated in the instructions, right, it tells you not we aren't really developing the jumping mechanics right now, but we introduce the variable so we can start considering it while setting the condition for transitioning from one animation to the other. And the same thing is said for the sprinting. So basically I added them because it gives me the opportunity to already use these even though they are set to false. That is fine because by default they are false, see unchecked. And the code doesn't set them yet because you're not able to sprint, you're not able by pressing shift, or jumping by pressing spacebar. That's okay. At least we can start using them. If they weren't here, we wouldn't be able to. We wouldn't see them here, right? And that gives us the opportunity to specify how to go from move to shoot, and from shoot to move. And notice that we have two possible ways of going back: this or that. The difference is whether we are checking that aiming is false or shooting is false. Then jumping and sprinting is still false for both, right? So the reason why we are checking jumping and sprinting and always saying they are false is because jumping and sprinting are higher priority. We have implemented them yet, but what it means is that if you are walking or running and you press the space bar to jump, anything you are doing stops and she actually jumps and also has to play the jumping animation. So that's why we have to say that it is false, because if it were true, nothing else would matter, right? Jumping is the thing that has the highest priority. So in the transition from move to jumping, the only thing we check is that jumping is true. Nothing, even if everything else is also true, doesn't matter. Jumping is highest priority. Sprinting is second in priority. You'll see it when we'll do it. So in the transition from move to sprinting, we check that jumping is false and sprinting is true. If everything else is also true, doesn't matter. Aiming, shooting, doesn't matter. We just sprint. And the reason we do it this way is because we don't want Ellen to be able to shoot while jumping or sprinting, meaning either you walk and shoot or stand still and shoot, or you are sprinting, in which case you cannot shoot, or you are jumping, again you cannot shoot. So that it is basically how we designed her to work, right? So notice that when there is more than one transition, Unity uses three arrows instead of one. So if there is only one, it's because there's only one transition, one set of conditions. That are always all in AND, by the way. They have all to be true, all be verified at the same time. So aim and shoot has to be true, and jump and sprint have to be false for the transition from move to shoot to happen. Similarly, there are two sets of conditions. This one that says aim is false, and of course jumping and sprinting are false as well, or shoot is false and jumping and sprinting also false, of course, because they are higher priority, otherwise they would kick in. What it means is that either you are not pressing anymore the left mouse button or the right mouse button, doesn't matter, the animation for shooting stops, right? That's all it means. And because they are in AND, you don't want to have them both, right? It would be wrong to have 4 and says aim is false and shoot is false, and then of course also these two. Because in this case, she would stop shooting only if you release both buttons. Instead, it's enough that either one is released. So that's why we need two. Think about it a bit and you'll be clear. So it's important to understand that the number of arrows is not the number of transitions, because there's only 2 and still she puts 3. So if they were like 10, it would still be 3. That's just the way Unity does it, okay? So don't get confused. As you can see, they're all with this unchecked. So they're all interruptible, okay? All interruptible. Even though they all merge cleanly with the ones that come after, see? Merging. So it's all good. The current one and the next one. You can also change the weight a little bit how it does, but you know, we take the default and that's it. So this variable has been added, right, by saying add bool, and then I added all the shoot and also the jump and sprint so that we can start using them. But who sets them? So by default they're all set to false, like the speed that is something that varies from 0 to 1, by default is 0. How do we set them? Well, we set them programmatically. What we need to do is in Avatar Controller to set them, right? So in update, the first thing we do, we set is aim pressed, that corresponds to this. So the spelling has to be exactly the same. Capital I, capital A, capital P, and everything else lowercase. So it has to be the same. If there was, even if the P was lowercase, it wouldn't match, okay? And we set it to the value of this. So that's what character animator set bool does. Sets the variable the parameter is called, corresponding to this name, because we know it's a Boolean, we set it to the value of this Boolean, is aim pressed. Now, who set this? Of course, is an input controller, right? Remember, on aim, is aim pressed is set equal to whatever you read from the context. So basically from the right mouse button, right? So if the right mouse button is pressed, it's true, otherwise it's false. And this is a global public variable. That means from the other script we can read it. Right? Okay, very well. And same for is should pressed, again from input. Of course we have to add it. If you add these three, and then on should we go here. Is should pressed is the variable that is equal to whatever the left mouse button or the other way we have to activate it is pressed or not. If it is pressed, it's true. If it is not pressed, it's false. And because it's public, we can read it from here again, so we can use it to set this. Is should pressed, of course, corresponds to this. So you see that when I press the right mouse button, this becomes checked, and when I press to the left, this becomes checked. Let's see. Let me show you. I press the right mouse button. See, it's checked now. And I press the left one, also the other one. Now I release the right mouse button, but I keep the left one. Or I press the right, but I release the left, or release both, or press both. All right? That's how it works. And the reason is this part reads which button I'm pressing, right? The input controller. It sets it in global variables, and then at any time the other script, when it is convenient to it, for instance, as soon as update starts, reads them and uses it to tell the animator that these variables are set. All right? That's how the animator works. Notice that the animator only decides the animations, okay? For instance, we saw before that when we aim, she just keeps walking if you're walking, or idling if she's idle. Doesn't really influence the animation. Both have to be true. Both have to be true to do something to the animation and change it. So we saw that it is a merge state, a blend state, sorry. And we saw this is humanoid from the avatar and the animation. The idle only requires to loop in time, right? Because it's a cycle animation, right? You are basically, she is holding the gun like this and breathing, I guess, right? So it just keeps going. And so you check this and then also this. The second one is to make it such that if the animation doesn't cycle cleanly, it sort of bends it so that it does cycle cleanly. In this case, I suspect you don't need it because here is green. That means it does cycle cleanly. So for instance, an animation that when you jump forward doesn't cycle, right? Because the start and the end are completely separated. But you don't want to cycle that. Whereas walking, idling, usually here is green if the animation is done right. But even if you weren't, you could check this one after this and it would sort of make it happen. I always check them both just in case. I don't want, I want to make sure that, you know, your cycle's fine. And that's all it does. Because it is a gun idle animation, she's not really moving, jumping or anything, right? So you don't even need to check the others. You could, but nothing would happen. For the other one, shoot rifle, as you remember, she's actually moving forward, right? Now, here it is shown in place, but you remember that when we showed it here, she was indeed moving forward, right? Of course, we could have done it in place, but we didn't. So how do you make it make this root motion apply? Well, you go to Ellen, and here in the animator you say apply root motion, okay? But if you apply the root motion, what would happen is that there will be two things that influence the position of Ellen. Us, via code, but because, for instance, we would say, move her a little bit forward while, for instance, she plays the walking animation. So that's why it looks like she's walking, because programmatically we move her forward, and in place she moves her legs and arm. So when you play it all together, it looks like her walking is causing her to advance. But if you had both, sometimes things would mess up. So the best way, in my experience, to do it is that from Mixamo, you want not to be in place, so you want the root motion. You download it with that. You say that you want to use it, but because you want really to move her left and right, up and down programmatically, you choose to bake basically everything. When she moves vertically, when she rotates on the XYZ plane, and the root transform rotation, all of them need to be checked. Otherwise, she does weird things like she dips into the ground and things like that. Experiment with it. Try to uncheck some of them. Remember, every time you change something, apply. And that's it. I verify that this is the best for the walking and while shooting animation. Once you've done that, you pretty much are good, right? You have wired up all the transitions. You have set up the right conditions for both. So there are 3, 1 and 2 in this direction. And all should be good, right? You have made them all humanoid and so on. I explained you why we have the extra 2-1 here. What else is left to explain? Well, maybe we explained that we added the shooting to the on shoot. That is very much like all the others, right? They all work more or less the same. And then from here we use them immediately, and it is all explained here. As you can see, these are the 2 animations, and these are the controls and the on shoot. Okay. Of course, we have to add also shooting. So let's see how it is done. Well, we have to go to scripts, double click on controls, and there you go, shoot it is. How it works? Well, it's a button. Now, the first one usually is already there when you add it, right? And we say listen, and then we press the left mouse button and it appears and you choose it. Controls, again, you press listen, control, and you choose control for the keyboard. So if you want to shoot pressing control, you can do it. And then the right trigger. I remind you that the left trigger on the gamepad makes her aim, and then the right one makes her shoot. This is like Uncharted. I just use Uncharted as a reference for what to do. That's it. I thought. Then don't forget, as usual, to save, so that when you close it, this thing regenerates this file. That is the one that has these, right? This wouldn't be there if it don't regenerates, and so we wouldn't be able to connect it to this new function that we make. That sets this public variable that we use here. So it's all it's kind of complicated to explain, but really logically it's very simple what's going on. And it is all explained here, as you can see. All the things you need to bake, all the conditions, and whether the exit has to be checked or not. Pretty much it's all there. Let me show you one thing. So what here, if we uncheck this, I don't know if I already showed you before, but just in case. Now the unit doesn't know when the spawning animation is over what to do. So this is the last frame of the spawning animation. Now if I go, say, press W, you see she's still stuck in the last frame of the animation for spawning, but it's not transitioning, because we are saying don't transition when the animation is over, but there is also no condition, so she never knows how to get out of this. I mean, we could do it programmatically, but You need to have either or, right? In this case, it's perfectly fine to say completely make the spawning animation so that we get to see it. That's how the game starts, in a sense, by her getting up. And now we can move her. So notice that for now there is a bug that I will show you in a quick video how to fix. But for now, let me show you that while it is playing, you can already move her, for instance, pressing W, right? And she's still coming up. Let me show you. While she's playing the animation to spawn, you can already move her forward, right? And she doesn't try to merge it with the moving animation because we are telling her to complete the spawning animation, right? So the way to fix this bug where she starts sliding on the ground while still playing the spawning animation is programmatically to wait that the spawning animation is over before even reading the keyboard. And it is actually quite simple but interesting because there is a mechanism in Unity to generate events at any time within an animation. In this case, for us, it will be at the very end. We generate an event, and then in the code we receive it. And once we receive that, we sort of unlock the code that reads the keyboard, reads the mouse, reads the gamepad, and acts upon it before it doesn't even try to read it. So, as you can see, while the animation will be playing for spawning, even if you press W, she won't be moving. Okay, so that's how we're gonna fix it. So don't get scared if it seems inconsistent. There is a solution. And the rest is pretty much move is a blend of idle and moving forward, and the shooting is a blend of idle gun and shoot rifle. The conditions, we have seen the code, we have seen the controls, pretty much that's it. Yeah, there is this one thing in here, right? You see that this is unchecked, so that gives us the opportunity to specify something other than 0 and 1. Since if it is checked, well, in this case we already set 0.2, but by default this is 0 and this is 1, right? And this is checked. All right. Let's say we want to set something, so you have to uncheck this and say, let's say 0.2. That means at this, 0.2. That means for a little bit the gun idle animation holds. That means if you just barely touch W, for instance, she won't get out of playing the idle animation. In fact, we could really do it also for the other one. Right now is 0 and 1, so let's actually fix that. 0.2. So this is usually good to do because, again, if you just tap W or A as D, right, you don't want to get her to get out of the idle animation. Let me show you. All right, so now she plays the idle animation. Now I tap W. See, she's fundamentally moving slightly forward, but not much, right? So we can still progressively move, but she stays in idle a little longer. That's it. Before starting merging it with the moving forward, she holds a little more to the idle animation. So because we changed something, now we want to do the following. As you know, at the end of every video, basically you have to click on main, because remember, is a prefab, right? It's a special prefab because it is loaded with resources, but fundamentally it's a prefab, so we want to go select it, go to overrides, apply. Now we can delete it because it's in here. Once you apply the overrides in here, and then because of the main architecture, it will spawn automatically. And there you go, it's there, and LN is there, and so now everything still works, right? Shooting. Now the window is a little small, so it's not so easy to see that things are actually working, but okay. So now she moves, and now I shoot. That's it. And what else? This is the gun idle animation. This is the moving animation. Okay. Very well. I hope this is a bit long video, but really it's all pretty simple. I just wanted to go through certain details before moving to the next video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.